The big story this week on India Ascents. Race to the White House heats up. Current President Joe Biden and his predecessor Donald Trump faced each other in their first presidential debate. This is the election that the world is watching, and it impacts everyone from Russia to China to Europe to Ukraine to Israel and of course to India. But unlike New Delhi, where irrespective of whichever candidate wins, policy continuity is going to happen, it may not be the same for some of the others. And here's why. Russian President Vladimir Putin is wondering if Trump comes to power, how will the Ukraine conflict end? Trump said on the debate that unlimited supply of funds and weapons to Ukraine must stop. Chinese President Xi Jinping would be wary the next occupant of White House could come down heavily on Taiwan, Tibet and trade. While Trump is set to double down on tariffs, Biden is likely to harden stance on China's invasion of Taiwan. For Europe, questions related to the funding of NATO will be priority. To take on China and Russia, EU and the US need each other. But Biden and Trump have very different ways of addressing these issues. Trump does not keep EU and NATO at the very center, but Biden does. Meanwhile, for Israel, it's a mixed bag. Trump moved the capital to Jerusalem, recognizing Israel's historical claim when he was the president. But he could now wrap up and ask the Israelis to wrap up their war against Hamas quickly. Meanwhile, it seems Biden is willing to wait it out. Meanwhile, for India, as I said, America needs New Delhi, and both Biden and Trump are equally committed to pushing a common agenda related to trade, technology, defense, and the Indo-Pacific. Moving on specifically to the debate, well, it was lackluster, with President Biden faltering early on and being very unimpressive in most of his responses. Former President Trump was meanwhile being his usual self, aggressive, unwilling to answer questions beyond his focus area, which, by the way, was just immigration. Now, as far as the numbers are concerned, under Biden's watch, illegal immigration has reached record levels. In the last 4 years, 10 million illegal immigrants have entered the US. This has allowed Republicans to mix both skilled migration, which is needed, and illegal immigration under the same basket, making it the biggest poll plank. Economy is another issue. Under Biden, US economy has improved. In May, 272,000 jobs were added. Unemployment levels are about 4%, but it's the inflation, the cost of living, that's really hurting the average American. Inflation is about 3.3%, much above the comfort level of 2%, which is why it was such a big issue during the debate. In fact, listen into a slice of that 90-minute debate between Trump and Biden, where Trump hammered on inflation and Biden was unable to drive home the one big electoral plank, which is abortion.
We've made significant progress from the debacle that was left by President Trump in his last term. We find ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes, and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. This is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries?
As I said, this is an election that impacts everybody and every country in the world, which is why everybody is looking for body language clues to understand who could really be the next occupant of Oval House. And sitting presidents usually come across as being rusty in their first presidential debates, since they spent about 4 odd years in the Oval Office. But the first debate today saw Biden being fairly flat-footed in its responses, being tentative, almost losing his train of thought on several occasions. For the first time, a debate took place even before the two candidates have been formally ratified as the presidential candidates of their parties. Who knows, maybe this could be the Democrats' big strategy to test waters with an aging Biden and see if they could change their candidate ahead of the upcoming national convention. And if Biden remains the candidate, Trump may not agree to a second debate after all, because he's come off as a winner, even though he's a bit abrasive, but he would want this to be the lasting image before the voters go to the polling stations.